But that does not mean that one can cross the ocean by grasping a dog's tail. Being pleased with the demigods, the Supreme Personality of Godhead advised them to approach Dichi to beg him for the bones of his own body. Tadichi would comply with the request of the demigods, and with the help of his bones, Vritrasura could be killed. Now that's asking for a donation. Next one. Shri Shuka Uvacha Tasyasan Vishvarupasya Sirangsi Trini Bharata Sirangsi Trini Bharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam Iti Shushrama Shishuka Uvacha Tasyasan Vishvarupasya Shirangsi Trinibharata Somapitam Surapitam Anadam Iti Shushrama. Gentlemen. Ladies. Shri Shuka Uvacha, Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Tasya, of him, Asan, there were Vishvarupasya, of Vishvarupa, the priest of the demigods, Shirangsi, heads, Trini, three, Bharata, O Maharaj Parikshit, Somapitam, used for drinking the beverage Soma, Surapitam, used for drinking wine, Ana Adam, used for eating, Iti, thus, Shushruma, I have heard by the Parampara system. Translation. Shukadeva Goswami continued, Vishvarupa, who was engaged as the priest of the demigods, had three heads, used one to drink the beverage Somarasa, another to drink wine, and the third to eat food. O King Parikshit, thus I have heard from authorities. Please repeat. Shukadeva Goswami continued, Vishvarupa, who was engaged as the priest of the demigods, had three heads, used one to drink the beverage Somarasa, another to drink wine, and the third to eat food. O King Parikshit, thus I have heard from authorities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. One cannot directly perceive the kingdom of heaven, its king, and other inhabitants, or how they perform their various engagements. For no one can go to the heavenly planets. Although modern scientists have invented many powerful space vehicles, they cannot even go to the moon, not to speak of other planets. By direct experience, one cannot learn anything beyond the range of human perception. One must hear from authorities. Therefore, Shukadeva Goswami, a great personality, says, "What I am describing to you, O king, is what I've heard from authoritative sources. This is the Vedic system. The Vedic knowledge is called Shruti because it must be received by being heard from authorities. It is beyond the realm of our false experimental knowledge." So, I'm sitting in Scotland and I'm reading to a religious community about a man who had 3 heads. And I have every confidence that those who are listening to me right now, including here in the room and online, will believe that there is such a person as a man with 3 heads. Why do I know this? Because they've accepted many other things, and this is just one more thing. I had great difficulty in believing many things in the Bhagavatam. I struggled. I was okay with, meditation and what I thought was, sort of a Vedic version of Buddhism and the shaved heads, the robes, the vegetarianism. But when it came to the Srimad Bhagavatam, very, very strange. It was almost like I was being asked to take in too much. It was too much. Okay, stop now, stop. 3 heads, 4 arms, airplanes that fly in space, giant fish, go easy on me, please. I'm new to all this. And it went on for some years. I hate to tell you, went on for some years. And I went to Africa, and in Africa I saw some very strange things. I remember seeing a man, he was begging at the side of the road, and you see some terrible deformities in Africa, some people who are disabled, but disabled in ways that we've never seen. So the man had a head, and then his chest was about that big, just about like that. That was all. There was a head, and the chest was just like this, just like this. You could put his chest like that, just like that. And the legs were like little matchsticks, as if the God of creation was having a laugh when he created the body and thought, how much sinful reaction can I put into one fetus? And I looked at this and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And then another man walked by on all 4s. And there was a colony of people walking on all 4s like, what can I say, like animals. And this was just on the 3rd day. And then, but one of the most amazing things was a little experience I had. Was I was picking champak flowers for the deities, and I saw a beetle, and that's not remarkable in itself, because beetles are tiny little things. This was the size of the beetle, and it was flying. And it was flying very slowly. Come on, hurry up. It's incredible. And it was purple and green. It was flashing purple and green. And it went and around the back of my head. Thank you, Mr. Beetle, and then flew off. And then This is very deep stuff today. In the very same month, I saw a chameleon, and I'd heard on some nature TV programs a long time ago that the chameleons could change color. But I grew up in an era where there was no color TV. So all the nature programs were black and white. So I'd never seen a chameleon change color. So it's a chameleon about that long. And it was the color like bright lime green. So I picked a flower. Very carefully, I held the flower up to his armpit here. The flower was the color of these walls. And after a few moments, from where the flower touched the chameleon's armpit, the bright green started to turn a yellowy green, and then yellow, and then the yellow spread all across the chameleon. And the chameleon, within 10 minutes, changed from bright green to bright yellow. I had just watched an animal change color right in front of my eyes. And a little voice, and it could have been the voice of God, said, see that? You weren't expecting that, were you? See, you don't know anything. And I was in India when I saw my first two-headed cow. Two-headed cow. One head, another head, I was like this. One body, two heads. And I had to pay a rupee to go and see this cow. There was a long line of people, and I thought, what the heck? I'm in India. There's a big sign outside saying, come and see the two-headed cow. I thought, this might be a once-in-a-lifetime chance. So I went and saw the two-headed cow. From those moments onwards, I never really found it too difficult to believe anything in the Bhagavatam. I don't think it's a question of, is it a question of faith? Well, in one sense, this purport is telling us what the Upanishad tells us. Iti shushu madiranam. Thus I have heard from authorities. Thus I've heard from authorities. And I guess it depends on how much faith you have in your authorities. And I'm not meaning your organizational authorities, but the authorities like Shukadeva Goswami and various others whose voices are there in the Srimad Bhagavatam. How much faith do we have? But it's also helped a little bit by personal experience. I walked into this movement at the age of 17, and to say that I was wet behind the ears, I'd seen nothing of life. Nothing of life. And a lot of what Prabhupada said, I disagreed with. Just in case you're wondering. It wasn't that it was devotion at first. A lot of what Prabhupada said, I disagreed with. I thought Prabhupada was too harsh. He was too, the foolish materialists, the nonsense karmi rascals, everyone is a Sudra. And I was saying, in my mind, I was saying to Prabhupada, there's nice people. There are nice people in the world. Why discount everybody and everything? There are nice people. I haven't found them yet, but there's nice people. I was an optimist, and I thought Prabhupada was a little pessimistic. But I'm sad to say that as my life has gone by, I've become old and grumpy and really pessimistic about the state of the material world. And I would like to say that I do now believe what Prabhupada says, that really it's very, very difficult to find anything of value outside the association of devotees. Very difficult. Well, I haven't found it yet. That means it's impossible. I'm willing to believe that it's still possible, but iti shushu madiranam, I've heard that it's not. We should know what this shruti means, what it means to really, really hear. Because a lot of time, the way we hear Bhagavatam class or the way we hear things about Krishna consciousness is really like the old generation game conveyor belt. Cuddly toy, tea's made, washing machine, vacuum cleaner. We're just, watching. We watch the world go by with our mind, porridge, toast, service, car keys. It's like a moving conveyor belt all through the day. Bhagavatam class, 3 heads, 4 hands, Indra. It just sort of goes in and comes out the other side. Yep, okay. Gradually you can become purified by that. But better still is to practice the art of Shruti and be Shruti Dara. Shruti Dara means he or she who captures what they hear. And a story was told in this regard. In the days of Victorian India, there were 2 British soldiers on the bank of the Ganges, and they struck up a conversation, and the conversation became heated, and they started pushing each other, as men do. And in India, if they get angry, they've got really angry when one of them takes their shoe off and starts. It's the ultimate. You can't get any greater insult than to take your shoe and threaten to hit the person with your shoe. You see this sometimes. I've seen it. So anyway, these were British men. They didn't do that. But they started having a fight. Come on then, come on. You think you're hard enough? Come on. Yeah, they started fighting. So little did they know that there was a man sitting a few yards away, and he was overhearing them, and he was watching them, and he was, just looking to see how these British soldiers in uniform were behaving. Anyway, they both got arrested. Someone spotted them from a distance, came over, got arrested, and they were taken to a court-martial. There's an army court. And the commanding officer said, well, he said, have you got any witnesses? Because they both said, he started it. No, he started. I was just self-defense. So they both said it was self-defense. Have you got any witnesses? And they said, well, there's only one old Hindu fella sitting. I doubt if he even understands English. So they asked him to come. And he was a Shruti Dara. He could capture anything by hearing. So he didn't speak any English, but in the court, he stood up to give his testimony, and he repeated verbatim in English, fluent English, the conversation that he'd heard from 2 weeks previously. This story, I'm not sure if it's a Prabhupada story. I heard it many years ago, and I always thought it was fantastic. So this is what hearing means. Therefore, when we recite these verses, the reason why we recite these verses the way we do is because of the old classical system of memorization, line by line by line. Prabhupada said, repetition is the mother of learning. Another one, repetition is the mother of learning. If you repeat something often enough, you will learn it. Just like, so these verses we repeat. So Prabhupada said, each verse should be chanted at least 10 times. The first few times you'll become familiar with the verse, and there is hope that you may learn the verse. Now, in the olden days, in the golden days, when Prabhupada was here, devotees used to study Srimad Bhagavatam in the morning, Bhagavad Gita at night, Ishopanishad during the day, and Nectar of Devotion at some time. But Ishopanishad at lunchtime was a regular feature. And the idea was that the Guru gives the disciples an Upanishad to study, and they learn it thoroughly. Now, it should be relatively easy because the Chandogya Upanishad is 680 verses. Okay? Guru gives you that. You are studying all day from the age of 8 all the way through to 16. The Guru gives you Ishopanishad. It's only 18 mantras. The Guru gives you Upadesh Amrita. It's only 11 mantras. How easy can it be? And yet still we don't. The Guru has given us the Brahma Samhita, Anybody know the Brahma Samhita off by heart? No, we don't. You know the Brahma Samhita off by heart? Well done, Gandhaki. Round of applause, please, for Gandhaki. Fantastic. Yeah. The other standard things that we learn, maybe you learn Purusha Sukta, maybe you learn Sri Sukta, and in south of India they will learn things in Tamil also, but standard Shastras people will learn, and that will stay with them for the rest of their life. So it's a good habit. So it's not only hearing from authorities, but hearing as if I need to remember. There was an old story of a Buddhist teacher. He went down, as they do in India, to the river to have a bath at midday, and his disciple went with him, downstream, of course, in order to get the Guru's mercy flowing that way. And so the Guru, at one point, the Buddhist Guru, took his disciple's head like this and pushed it under the water. So he just held it there. And the disciple thought, Gurudev is doing this, but why is he doing it? There must be some lesson. Anyway, he was just about to pass out. He was straining, the bubbles were coming out of his mouth. And then the Guru let him up. The Guru said, what were you thinking about, my son? He said, Master, I was only thinking, I must breathe. He said, this is the intensity with which you must aspire for enlightenment. It must be like that at every waking moment, a desperate desire to become enlightened. So, with us, because we take vows for a lifetime, sometimes it's easier to domesticate our vows, isn't it? To make them ordinary. When you take vows for a short time, you're really determined. You're fasting for Nirjal. I'm fasting for Nirjal. All the men. This is how the men talk. Maybe women don't talk like this, but the men talk. Yeah, you fast for Nirjal. Do you think you can do it? Yeah, I think I could do it. Fasting for Nirjal. Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhu. So we do that. It's easy to do. A, when you're doing it for a short time. B, when you're doing it with others. Just like we have at Bhaktivedanta Manor, we have be a monk 7-day challenge. Well, could you be a monk for 7 days? A lot of people think they're up to it. And a lot of people, they do it, and they do finish the 7 days. A couple drop out, but mostly they do. I can be a monk for 7 days. But another week? No, I want to go home to mum. I need me chips. So come and be a monk for 7 days. So limited. Or the Payavrata ceremony, 12 days. Or sometimes people take a vow of vegetarianism. Hindu vow of vegetarianism. I'm going to be vegetarian every Monday. I'm going to be rigid. I've been following this vow for 1 year. Vegetarian every Monday. Oh, well done. But better than nothing, I would say. So short-term vows done with other people are good. Long-term vows, sometimes we need a periodic renewal. I was in Bangalore at the opening of a temple, the consecration of a new temple. It's a big thing, a new temple. And the chief guest was Vishvesh Tirtha Swami, who I'd known 30 years ago. He was one of the 4 Madhvacharya Mahants. 8, one of 8. And the way they do it is they raise funds for 14 years, and they are the temple president for 2. Good system, eh, Prana? Temple president for 2 years, raising funds for 14 years before you become the temple president. And sometimes it's called the pariyaya. And sometimes they've done it once, sometimes they've done it twice. So he had done it about 4 times, I think. Hare Krishna. Now he had taken this gentleman, when you see him up against a dark background, you can hardly believe your eyes, because this gentleman was 84 and he had radiance coming from his body. Radiance just to about here. I saw it with Srila Prabhupada against a dark oak background. It was one of the things that convinced me to keep going. Prabhupada was standing here, then Prabhupada moved this way, and he moved that way as he got ready to give class. And at the back of Prabhupada, now we have sort of curtains and beads and embroidery and all kinds of things, but in those days it was dark oak, very dark oak. And Prabhupada's effulgence came out to here. And when Prabhupada moved, his effulgence moved with him. And I was sitting maybe where Prabhuji is here. And when I saw that, it was one of the things that convinced me, stick with it, kid. Stick with it. You know, he's the real deal. So I saw this again with this, it's called Viryas or Ojas. I saw this with Vishwesh Tirtha Swamis, like this. And as he moves, the effulgence moves. Anyway, he had taken sannyas at the age of 14. And because they look at the chart, they look at the palm, they read the palm, they look at the astrological chart, and they choose. Okay? You ready, Nimai? Sannyas? So taken sannyas at the age of 14, and immediately at 14, they are plunged into the full life of a sannyasi, traveling and preaching. So what are you going to preach at 14? You're going to preach everything that you've learned up to that age. So if you start Gurukula at 5, what comes out of your mouth at 14 is all these Sanskrit verses. And they come out pretty heavy as well, because they learn the art of debate. They sort of shout the mantras sometimes. So anyway, but the point was he was now 84, so that's 14 to 84, 70 years. He'd been a sannyasi for 70 years. Has an effect. So he was not initiating people, but he was, if you like, reinitiating them. He was taking through them the ceremony of reinitiation as an annual commitment. And the way they do it is they have the iron tapa, you know, the kind of iron. They heat it in the fire, and it's given by the guru on your arms, and it's iron or silver, I think, silver or brass. So they heat it up in the fire. You think ISKCON initiation is difficult, so they burn it into your skin. Here and here. Here you've got the Sudarshan chakra. Here you've got the conch. So you do that every year in some cases. The Sri Vaishnavas do it 1 year. It stings a little bit. I did it not with him, but somebody else. It was an ISKCON devotee. There was an ISKCON devotee, and at the opening of the Hyderabad temple, Prabhupada mentioned to him that ISKCON devotees should learn all these rituals for the consecration of deities. So he went to see the great teacher of such rituals in the south of India. And then he came back to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, they said, I've got to get initiated if I want to learn all these things. Because for other schools, initiation is something that you do before a period of learning. It's not what we call initiation. So initiation just begins your period of learning. So Prabhupada said, oh yes, then do it. So this ISKCON devotee then had to have his arms. So he was telling me about this. The Prabhupada had told him, and he'd learned this. And he came to England and he did a fire yagya. And it just so happens that he had his tapa sticks with him. And it just so happened that he'd heated them up. He said, right, who wants it? I said, yep, I'll have it. Anyway, he shouldn't have done it. We shouldn't have done it. It means much more to people. But it was just happened in the moment. Maybe 70, 79, maybe something like that. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has said that this tapa should be done only with sandalwood paste. It can be done with sandalwood paste. And then in the 1700s, I forget the name of the Vaishnava, but he had a dream anyway, in which it was said that no, this is an item of sacred ritual from Dwarka. It is more fitting if one wants to worship Dwarkadish. But for worshipping Shri Radha Krishna, we don't need this at all. So from 1700 onwards, it was dispensed. Anyway, that's not the subject of today's talk. The subject today is the man with three heads. So Vishwarupa, I just read this, and it just seemed, when I read about Vishwarupa, now I just think, you see, the thing is that Prabhupada was translating the books. When I joined, there was only like 2 or 3 books, and the first canto of the Bhagavatam, which was the one we had available, there was no third canto. At least I never saw one. Maybe they had them in LA, where we had the first canto and second canto. So first canto is all about, sages and forests, and a sage on the mountaintop. And, okay, Narada Muni comes down from outer space playing his veena. It was a bit of a stretch, but okay, otherwise everything was cool. Then the second canto was what? It was all about the universal form and devotional service, and I thought, yeah, this is all right. And then they played a great surprise on me, and the great surprise was that Prabhupada was translating more books that I also had to believe. And eventually we got to the 5th canto. And the hell part was okay. Then the planets part was not okay. And it really pickled our brain. We just, for days and days and days, days and days and days, devotees all over the movement were talking about the 5th canto, which they still have up until today. But now when I read that Vishwarupa is here, you know what I think of? When I think of how this incident, I believe, gave its name to the section of the Taittiriya Upanishad. There's a Taittiriya Upanishad that's named after the partridge. I just think of partridges because one of his heads was turned into a partridge. That's the next bit. So the Taittiriya Upanishad is a wonderful section called the Bhriguvali. And the Bhriguvali goes, Ahamannam, 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 Aham Tang Shloka Kriti. And it says, it's just, anyway, it's a wonderful section that is sometimes chanted. But in this chapter, we're going to be finding that there's a great tit for tat. Tit for tat, how you translate that in Ukrainian. Tit for tat means, you hurt me, I'll hurt you. You fight me, I'll fight you. So here we have Vishwarupa is going to be, he's revealed the secret of the Narayan Kavacha shield. Last night in the Krishna book, I was reading the story of how Krishna and Satyabhama defeat Bhaumasura. And Krishna wants to reward Satyabhama for her help. Satyabhama has been a little piqued that Rukmini has the Parijata flower. So Krishna says, but you're my dear wife, Satyabhama. Why do you want just one Parijata flower? I'll get you a whole tree. We'll go to Indra's planet and we'll pick up a whole tree. So Krishna had defeated Bhaumasura. Indra was very pleased. Oh, my Lord, thank you so much for helping me. And then Satyabhama, uproots a whole Parijata. She's very strong. She uproots a whole, there's a whole cult of Satyabhama in South India. So she uproots a Parijata tree. And Indra becomes very annoyed. It's only just a few years ago that Indra got annoyed at Krishna, and it didn't turn out very well for him. Thunder, lightning, lifting Govardhan Hill, and he comes to Krishna at what is now Govinda Kund, and he says, "My dear Lord, I'm sorry." So how is it that just a few years later, presumably it's the same Indra, because it's just Earth years is what? Krishna was 8, 9, 10 when that happened. No, he wasn't, he was 5, wasn't he? 5-year-old boy, 6, 5 or 6, so he lifts up Govardhan Hill. This is how many years later? Not that much. So Indra's memory seems to be so, he's the opposite of Shrutidhara, isn't he? He can't even remember what he did a few years ago. Prabhupada makes the point that foolish materialistic men, that they can never understand their true position because sense gratification causes them to really lose control. There's an old story about it's a Japanese story. This is for Umi. It's a Japanese story. And Umi, I'm going to make sounds that sound Japanese, but you will know that they're not Japanese. But it's the Japanese movies I watched when I was a kid. So there was a samurai warrior, and he'd gone a bit rogue, and he'd become a bandit, and he was roaming the countryside with fellow bandits, and every village that he came to, he would terrorize. But he had a little spark of inquiry about, life. So he pulled into the village, and they terrorized the village, set fire to a house to make sure everybody knew who was in charge. He said, "Who is the wise man of the village?" They brought forward the wise man. And he said, "Wise man," he said, "tell me." He said, "What is heaven and what is hell?" And the wise man looked at him. And he said, "Why should I tell you?" He said, "Oh, a clever wise man, huh?" He said, "Because if you don't tell me the answer to my question, I will kill you. You see, this sword is very hungry for necks." So the wise man said, "I would never reveal my wisdom to a pig like you." So the warrior goes, "Oh!" This is my Japanese. He goes, takes out his sword like this, and he raises it high. And just as he's about to strike, the wise man says, "This is hell. This is hell. You are in hell now. You terrorizing people all over the country, constantly beset by anger. This anger is making you unhappy, and you are in hell in this very life." And at that moment, the warrior has a realization, and he drops his sword, and tears begin to fall from his eyes. And he realizes he's been a very long time dominated by this negative emotion of anger. So he sinks to the floor. He bows down to the wise man, and the tears from his eyes fall on the wise man's feet. And the wise man just reaches out with his hand and ruffles his hair, and he said, "And this, my son, is heaven." So in a moment. So Indra is very much like that. Uncontrollable. Peak. Uncontrollable. How can you call it? Uncontrollable frustration. He just gets frustrated very, very quickly. Pure mode of passion. Pure mode of passion. You just can't, it's like being around a king. He's got too many pens on his desk. Get them off. It's just pens, my lord. It's just pens. Get them off. So being around a very powerful person. I told you the story the other day about the king of Iran, didn't I? Absolute power. But also absolute power, when a person knows that they have absolute power, it goes to their head. It goes to their head. And they think, every single one of my emotions is sacred. They consecrate their emotions. So if I'm feeling angry, and I'm a guru, no, let's not go there. I'm feeling angry, and I'm a king. It's righteous anger. It's righteous anger. It must be right. because I'm the king. So they are trapped in a world of their own creation. But the difference is between a king and a devotee is a devotee will always stand back from a negative emotion. Lust, greed, anger, envy, illusion, madness. What's the other ones? The bandits, Bhaktivinoda Thakur calls them, the bandits that'll strangle you on your way to Krishna. So the devotee will always stand back and look at those emotions and think, that's not me. That's just the conveyor belt of the mind. Just teddy bear, tease maid, vacuum cleaner, cuddly toy, just all going by. So devotee practices seeing the conveyor belt of the mind and not identifying with the thoughts. Devotee sees a thought coming, doesn't hold on to it, and lets it go. Lets it go. You know the old story about the man who was famous in the village for never becoming too excited when good things happen, and never becoming sad when bad things happen. You know that one? I told that one before. They had no children. Him and his wife had no children. It's a story from France. They had no children. And so the villagers sometimes, they would come to this couple and say, sorry for your loss. You know, you've been married a long time, but you had no children. And the man and his wife, the man would say, it's all right. In this life, things come and they go. I don't become happy when good things happen. I don't become sad when bad things happen. And the wife became pregnant and they had a son. And the villagers came to the house and said, congratulations, hey, streamers, party hats, fantastic. The man said, why are you all so excited? I told you, when good things happen, I don't become excited. And they all went away thinking, strange man, strange man. And then the boy grew up and they got a horse for the boy. And boy was riding the horse and, horse ran off, horse ran away. Only family in the village that had a horse ran off. The villagers came, they said, so sad to hear the news that your horse ran off. He said, why? I don't become sad. Why should you become sad? I never become sad when bad things happen. I never become excited when good things happen. If you know what's good for you, you'll do the same. So 3 days later, that horse came back with 3 wild horses. So now he had 4 horses. Villagers came, you know the rest of the story. And they said, oh. So then boy knew how to ride the horse very well. He fell off and he broke his leg. This time the villagers said, surely the man must be unhappy. Your one and only son, your one and only child faces being disabled because he's lost the use of a leg. It may not mend. And he said, no, I'm not worried. I told you, I never become sad when bad things happen. It's not worth it. And so then Napoleon came to the village and he was fighting the Russians. Napoleon was fighting the Russians. And he took all the young men of the village in a mobilization. He took all the young men of the village to fight, except this person, except this young man. And the villagers realized that this breaking of the leg was actually a blessing. So in Indian circles, it is said that good fortune and bad fortune is like the mango flower and the palasha flower and the mango fruit and the palasha fruit. If you see a palasha flower, you think that the fruit of that tree must be very sweet. It's not. If you see a mango flower, you think the fruit of this tree must not be very sweet. You're wrong. It's the best fruit. So when life gives you a palasha flower, be suspicious because it may not be all that it seems. When life gives you a mango flower, be suspicious that it may not be as bad as you think. Yeah. One door opens, No. They say if in your house one door closes, another door opens, find a carpenter, because your doors are all hung properly. So we see in the Bhagavatam that Indra seems largely incapable of controlling this, and he becomes very attached. So here he's becoming disturbed yet again. So what happens in this chapter is that we'll see that Vishvarupa, who has done so much, loses his life, and each of his heads become a different kind of bird. And it's a wonderful, wonderful. And from just yesterday we were talking about correct pronunciation of Sanskrit being important. And the Diksha Guru gives you the mantra, but the Shiksha Guru tells you how to pronounce the mantra. In the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, these are pure names of the Lord. So bhakti is important. Bhakti is more important, than pronunciation. Although I must say that I was in a car last week and there was a young devotee chanting in the back. And I've never, at least for 40 years, heard japa that was so badly pronounced. I mean, this was way off the charts. You get sometimes devotees going, schnick, 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 schnick. Instead of Krishna becomes a schnick, becomes a Rama, becomes a Rama, 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 Lama, 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 Lama. Have you heard that before? Instead of Rama, it's Lama, 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 Lama. This devotee was sort of like, I And I had to laugh because the devotee next to him was an innocent young bhakta, 2 weeks in the temple. He said to him, Prabhuji, your japa is very strong. How many rounds do you chant every day? And with a little bit of pride, this devotee said, I'm chanting 22 rounds a day. And I was in the front seat, just sort of. So I guess he'll never, if he comes to me and asks me something, I shall very gently point out. But in general, it is said that even if a devotee, instead of the word, what is the word? Yes, Vishnu. So the vocative name for many, or the oblative name is Govinda, Govindaya, Trivikram, Trivikamaya, Janardhan, Janardanaya, when we're making offerings to the Lord. If a devotee says, instead of what should be said, if he says Vishnaya unto Vishnu, instead of Vishnave, which is what it is, then Lord Janardhan will accept it. Lord Janardhan will accept it, even though it's mispronounced. So in the chanting of the holy names, the Lord is so keen to accept the devotion of the devotee that he will accept it. However, what we're going to see in this chapter is that if you mispronounce one syllable in a traditional fire sacrifice, you will come a cropper, and you will create the exact opposite of the effect that you want to produce. Mantras are very, very powerful. Mantras are very, very powerful. We don't, in ISKCON, we don't usually use mantras, do we? I think, did I tell the story of the snake bite last time? I don't want to say it again, but in Mayapur, when it floods, there's great problems with snakes because they float on the surface. They don't like the water either. So often people are bitten by cobras that are swimming in the water. So this person in the Mayapur region, who was known to one of our devotees, he was bitten by a cobra. And they took him to a snake bite mantra person who chanted mantras and then did something with shells and then with something puja with a brass plate and chanting mantras. And this mantra is not for liberation, it's just for snake bite, that's all it is. And then he hit the devotee, not hit the patient on the back with this plate. And from the place where he'd been bitten, it started oozing all this black blood. And his life was saved. So the devotee watching this, he told me the story. He said, it's just amazing to see what can happen with his mantras invoked properly. One more and then I'll finish. There was another difficulty when they were building the long building in Mayapur. I always call it the long building, but now it's called the Chakra building, where everybody, where the banks and the shops are. Anyway, whatever it's called, Chakra, maybe. So some of the workers had been, or somebody they didn't know who had been stealing the bricks. And the devotee who was in charge of construction, he said, well, this can't go on because we're going to lose all the bricks. So they said, you'll never be able to find him. And even if you accuse him of stealing the bricks, even if you have a suspicion, you'll never be able to prove it. He said, well, what do they do around here in India? He said, well, they have a system. There's an old man who chants mantras for finding thieves. He chants mantras for finding thieves. So they take two big bamboo poles and they tie them together in an X shape. So what they did, and then he chants mantras and does puja over the top. They line up all the workers, and the workers are a bit anxious because they've seen this before, they know what happens. And they take the bamboo and they just gently, like a when you're divining rod, when you're trying to find water, they just gently lay the sticks on the shoulders like this, just in an X. He chants mantras. I don't know the mantras. Just chant mantras. So they go down the line, and they got to worker number 8, and the sticks all by themselves just went like that. And the man said, I'm sorry. I was just doing it for my family. I'm sorry. I'll bring them back. And the devotee who saw that, he told me the story, and he said, it's amazing. The power of mantras, but they have to be chanted syllable perfect. Syllable perfect. We're just lucky that the mantra that we have been given does not have to be chanted syllable perfect, but please do your best. Krishna will accept your mispronunciation, he'll accept your accent, but he may not be so willing to accept missing words that are skipped, inattentiveness, or words that are, displaying other forms of lack of faith. Hare Krishna. So I have really enjoyed my stay here. I've been here for the longest I think I've been here. I usually have 3 days. Now it's 3.5. 4 days if you add the afternoon. So I've really enjoyed my time, and you've all looked after me really well. I've enjoyed our discussions, and I shall be going back on the train to that, what's that country called? South of here? England, that's right. I'm almost forgetting. I shall be going back a happy man and taking your association and your enlivened spirit with me. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Did you finish that? I think we finished. Oh, okay. I've got, my time is your time. I've got time for questions. Yes, Janava Priya.
In the purport, it was talking about how we shouldn't rely on our senses, but on hearing from authorities.
Yeah.
And I was thinking how quite often when we hear from authorities, because it comes through our senses, we might not understand it properly. Like we read a purport in the Bhagavatam, and as many people who read it might understand slightly different things from it.
Yeah.
So if you could kind of help.
Yeah. Well, I did tell a story the other day where a lady went to Prabhupada and said, what does it mean? The moon rises and the fish. The moon rises, the fish. Some section she was just puzzled. And Prabhupada said, say it again. Say it again. Say it again. Now do you understand? He said repetition is not only the mother of learning, but is the mother of understanding as well. So I think what Prabhupada is hinting at is that there's a more intellectual process by which a devotee reads the commentaries and studies what different commentators have said on the subject. And then there's a sort of Shruti Dhara process where we just take the so you can intellectualize your understanding with philosophical discrimination, and that's part of it as well. That's called sort of seeking to understand. And the other process is just to drink it all up, to relish, and to allow it to build up your faith without bringing the intelligent discrimination into it. And I think for us Westerners, what we like to do, we like to be critical thinkers, because critical thinking is what brought us to Krishna consciousness in the first place. So we are very happy with our critical thinking very much. Thank you very much. And we don't want to set it to the side. And sometimes we find that people who are coming from, Vaishnava culture or Hindu culture, Indian culture generally, they either don't need this thinking faculty, they just accept. And for us Westerners, I suppose we would look at that as being sentimental, gullible, and perhaps vulnerable, perhaps not a state that we would like to be in. Sometimes we can look at people and we can think, well, wouldn't it be nice to have just unassuming, uncritical faith, where I was just convinced because it's in the book? Wouldn't that be nice for a change? But we want to hang on to our critical faculty. The difficulty is sometimes that critical faculty gets in the way of Shruti Dhara, really hearing as if this is it, I've got to understand this. It's a bit like, when I'm not nervous on a plane, I don't listen to the announcements. Please give your attention to the cabin crew. They'll demonstrate the safety elements of this aircraft. Even if you're a frequent flyer, please listen. It may be difficult, may be different from the plane that you normally fly on. If there's a sudden drop in cabin pressure, the oxygen mask will drop down in front of you. Please put your on before they... And we know so sometimes when I'm not afraid, which is not very often these days, I don't listen. I really don't listen. It just, yeah, I've heard this before. I've heard it before. I don't need to listen to this part. I know it all. Life belt under the seat, oxygen mask. Don't inflate your life belt until you've left the aircraft in the freezing cold water of the Atlantic, where you'll freeze to death anyway. So, in the highly unlikely event of landing on water, yeah, because we're not flying over water anywhere between here and my destination. But on times when I'm a little bit anxious about flying, I listen uncritically to the safety announcements. I even read the card. How many times have I read the card in 45 years of flying? How many times have I read the card? It says the same thing. But now I think, yep, I'm just checking where the exits are. Okay, there's an exit there, exit. Okay, good. And I feel that I need to, because there's this sense of, I won't say danger, but fear of not knowing in a critical moment what I should do. And I think it's the same with Prabhupada's books. There's a difference between, there's a verse that says, I think it's one of the Tamil authors or something, but it says that, he says, my dear Lord, may I look at your image in the temple. No, what is it? My dear Lord, may I chant your name with as much concentration as a dying man looks at a picture of God. When you're dying Not that I've had this experience such that I can remember, but I must have died many times. But when a dying man looks at a picture of God, of his religion, everything that he's ever believed in will come to the surface at that point. So when we're really, I mean, I told the story before when I was, there was a chance that my cancer had gone all over my body, and this MRI machine would tell me how far the cancer had gone. And it was at the end of a long corridor, really long corridor. Would probably put it at the longest hospital corridor. And it was sort of a nightmarish quality walking down that, to the MRI machine, which would tell me my fate. If the machine said, the cancer has gone all over your body, I was told, that's it, 18 months, you have 18 months to live. If the results of the machine said that it's not, it's, encapsulated, then you're okay, we can save your life. So this really sharpened my attention, And very strangely, as I was walking that long corridor to the MRI machine, I found myself praying the prayers from the last verse of the Ishopanishad. Not reciting the Sanskrit or the English, but just that prayer in my own words, without even knowing that I was repeating, the Ishopanishad, the 17 or 18. And I was saying, my dear Lord, you know me, I know you, I've tried. Haven't been a good devotee. But if there's anything that I have done, please remember it. Now, in one sense, that's a foolish prayer, because if what I dreaded having happened had already happened, it's too late. It's too late for such prayers. That's it, it's gone. So anyway, here I am, so the outcome was good. But I remember being so focused, so intensely focused, desperate. So with that sense of urgency, we should read the Bhagavatam. That sense of urgency, that I have to learn this, I have to believe it, and I have to understand it, because it will change my life if I do. Instead of, let me fall asleep and dribble. No one should dribble during the Bhagavatam class. Utishta Jagrata. Utishta Jagrata. How does it go? Utishta Jagrata. Prapya Varanya Bodhata. Kshirasya Dhara Nishita Turatyaya. Life is like a razor's edge. At any moment you could leave. Therefore, wake up, wake up, wake up. Hare Krishna. That's my little Umi. Then it'll be time for porridge, I think.
Actually, it's a question I wanted to ask yesterday.
Did you like my Japanese, by the way?
Not necessarily having as a occupation, we can develop the qualities of the Brahmana. And I think Krishna consciousness is about, to some extent, everybody should qualities of Brahmanas, like cleanliness, truthfulness,
Sure.
and so on. But also we hear that Srila Prabhupada had the ambition to spread a varnashram, like, so I'm not sure, because in ISKCON, for example, we don't really implement varnashram in a literal sense.
We love ashram, but we don't like varna.
Ashram is there.
We love ashram.
Yeah.
You brahmachari, grihasta, what are you? Vanaprastha? Oh, he's a sannyasi, bow down. We love ashram. In ISKCON you'll find very rigid ashrams. Very rigid ashrams. But varnas we never talk about. Because Prabhupada, although he talked about varnashram, he set up this movement as a movement of Brahmins. You're correct. One time a devotee early on came to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I feel I'm more of a Kshatriya. What should I do? And Prabhupada said, there is no room in my movement for Kshatriyas. He said, I'm starting a movement of Brahmins. So he said that. And yet, many years later, after that, he said that he thought that 50% of his mission was unfulfilled because he had not created Varnashram. So when we say Varnashram, what most devotees mean is buying a cow. However, what Varna Ashram means is understanding your Varna. If you understand what Varna you are, you will never, ever, if you are a Sudra, try to become involved in management. Just don't do it. Devotees won't like you. They'll you'll disturb everybody. If you are a Brahmin and you really want to teach, but they want you to, dig the ground, then you'll also be unhappy. Most of the problems in ISKCON that I've seen come because we've got the wrong people in the wrong situation. But we don't talk about Varna because the idea is that if you're a Vaishnava, you can do anything for Krishna. That principle is also correct. If you're a Vaishnava, you're automatically a Brahmin because you develop Brahminical qualities. That principle is also correct. However, it is also correct that some understanding of my natural propensity must be there because we're talking about what you're going to be doing for 30, 40, 50 years of your life. So with that in mind, we should help devotees to find places where they can function, either as a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, or Shudra. Because everybody is one of those. Now, it is also true, Kalo Sudra Sambhava, in Kali Yuga, everyone is a Sudra. That's also true. But even within Sudras, there are Brahmins, Vaishyas, Kshatriyas, and Sudras. You know that? Even within the realm of Sudras. There's first class Sudra, second class Sudra, third class Sudra. So what is a first class Sudra? Well, second class Sudra. Second class Sudra is a person who's very good at chariot racing, very good at looking after horses. And this was the position that Krishna took. And this is why it's so remarkable that Krishna took that position as Arjuna's chariot driver, because it wasn't a Kshatriya position, it was a Sudra position. Looking after the horses at the end of the day, cleaning up the horse poo-poo, giving them fresh straw, putting bandages on them if an arrow would. This is all Krishna's duty. And during the battle, even though Krishna has revealed himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he's taking orders from Arjuna. So Arjuna's firing arrows, and Arjuna's foot is touching Krishna's shoulder, and he's tapping Krishna's shoulder. Left, right, left. Also right, left, like this. So Arjuna knows this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the position that he's taken is as my servant. He's told me to fight, and I need someone in this position driving the chariot. And I will now treat him as a servant. This is a very strange thing of Bhagavad Gita, which we normally finish reading Bhagavad Gita, but we don't read what happens afterwards. What happened afterwards is also very interesting, how Arjuna put these instructions into action. So for us, and devotees like to know, what is my tendency? What is my tendency? And the idea here is that in a period of training, when we're learning sadhana bhakti, we do what we're told. That's the general rule. In the ashram, Prabhupada said it should be run with militaristic discipline. And in the old days, there was no going to the temple president saying, I feel my tendency is to be a Vaishya. I don't want to give all the money at the end of the day. I want to invest in some stocks and shares. No, there's no. You go out on the orders of the spiritual master to sell books. You come back at the end of the day and you give every single penny to the authority, to your temple president. That's the way it works when you're in training. Later on in life, then it's the time to get very individualistic. But in an ashram, we are communal. This is life in an ashram. Therefore, householder life begins when you leave the monastic ashram. Householder life begins. You enter into a life of being independent. Sometimes that's not encouraged, I know, but it's just in the Shastras, householder life, that everybody should be responsible for their own children, for instance. Everybody should pay for their own house. Everybody should pay for their own breakfast cereal. Everybody should pay for their own horses or car, driving license. Prabhupada said the householders can. He said, the GBC came to Prabhupada and they said, Prabhupada, who's going to pay for the Gurukulas? You know, you want Gurukuls all over the world. He said the parents must pay. It's not a sannyasi's business to pay for the householders' children to go to school. So we struggle sometimes because we don't talk about Varna. So we get people who their Vaishnava qualities are not completely developed to the point where their tendencies have left them. So sometimes we'll get persons in, making, anyway, sometimes decisions are made that are not quite in keeping with the office that they hold. And so a little bit of a sharpened understanding of a person's tendencies is always good. Is that okay? Not too controversial, is it? Anyway, Hare Krishna. Time for breakfast. Is that all right? Good. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.